This man was one of New York's most notorious car thieves, but what set him apart was his specialty. He didn't steal whole vehicles. Instead, he masterminded the extraction of specific auto parts, ones so unusual, so unexpected, that car owners might not even notice they were missing at first. And he didn't work alone for long. His unique expertise gave rise to a syndicate, one behind some of the boldest automotive crimes of the century. A band of incredibly intelligent thieves, each specializing in the same niche trade, came together under one vision. What followed was a sprawling operation that evolved into a vast, organized network. Their haul? An astonishing $60 million fortune. But this isn't just a story about making money. It's a story about ascension. With his growing wealth, this man carved a path straight to the top of the Mafia food chain, earning both respect and fear in a world where those currencies are hard-earned and short-lived. His rise began with nothing, a self-made kingpin in one of the most dangerous criminal arenas imaginable. Armed with acute intelligence and razor-sharp observation, he clawed his way into a place reserved for only the most ruthless. So, who was this man, and how did he become the phantom king of car thieves? Stay tuned as we uncover the rise of New York's stealthiest automotive criminal. Our story begins in the 1990s, a time when New York City was struggling with an epidemic of car theft. In the 90s, New York was riddled with gangs and organized crime outfits, many of which revolved around the automobile trade. In just 1 year, over 150,000 cars were stolen in the city. Some were taken whole, others were stripped for parts, especially the expensive ones. But one incredibly valuable part remained overlooked, ignored by thieves who failed to understand its worth. Enter Maurizio Perrone, a man destined to unearth the hidden value of that forgotten component. Maurizio, of Italian descent, came from a family that had immigrated to America seeking a better life. As we know, many Italian immigrants became tied, fairly or not, to the growing web of mafia organizations that dominated American organized crime. Maurizio was no exception. He grew up in the shadow of mafia life, a world governed by hierarchy. At the bottom were the grunts, the foot soldiers who carried out the dirty work, theft, looting, kidnapping, and even murder. Then came the mid-level bosses, many of whom masqueraded as legitimate businessmen. And at the top, the bosses, the ones who pulled the strings. Everyone in that world wanted to rise, and Maurizio was no different. He started at rock bottom. His family was poor, with no real connections to grease his way up. He had to build himself from scratch, beginning with petty theft and looting, selling whatever he could to the higher-ups. But even then, he was watching, calculating, studying what sold and what didn't, what was in demand, what was easy to flip. Maurizio began networking with the sons of trade bosses, eager to learn the ins and outs of the business. Eventually, he found his calling. Car parts. It was the perfect intersection of profitability and skill. Once he'd gained enough experience, he shifted from stealing parts to buying them. He became a trader, purchasing stolen car components from lower-level thieves and reselling them at a markup. In his early days, he sold them right out of the trunk of his car, literally. His vehicle became a mobile shop, where parts acquired for next to nothing were flipped for a hefty profit. But this wasn't just about making money, it was a revolution. By 1994, with the streets of New York as his proving ground, Maurizio had built up enough capital to take a pivotal step. He opened a storefront. On the surface, it was just another auto parts shop. But in reality, it was a carefully crafted front, blending stolen parts with legitimate ones, so convincingly that even law enforcement wouldn't raise an eyebrow. He managed a dual inventory with surgical precision, ensuring that anyone who looked too closely would see nothing but a clean, thriving business. Behind this legitimate front, Maurizio navigated the treacherous waters of New York's criminal underworld. He knew the game well. If he wanted to survive and thrive, he'd need to stay on good terms with the Mafia. So he paid them, regularly, quietly. It wasn't just protection, it was insurance, and it worked. With his storefront secure and his criminal dealings under control, Maurizio's empire flourished. His shop became the cornerstone of a growing network, one that would eventually stretch beyond New York. He made sure to keep close ties with the petty thieves who supplied him. He paid them fairly and often, always keeping an eye out for the highest value parts with the best margins. And then, one day, he found it. The game changer. A single car part that would launch him from a mid-level trader to an elite figure in the criminal underworld. The airbag. Designed to save lives in collisions, airbags were, to Maurizio, a gold mine, incredibly valuable, shockingly easy to steal, and almost completely untraceable. A skilled thief could remove one in under a minute. Thanks to their compact size, they could be concealed and transported in bulk. And best of all, at the time, airbags had no serial numbers, which meant no way to trace them back to a specific vehicle. Maurizio had found his diamond in the rough. In a parking lot lined with 30 cars, his crew could strip every single airbag in under half an hour. Compared to the effort required to steal a full car or even a large part like a catalytic converter, this was child's play. And the profits? Unbelievable. An airbag could sell for $1,000 to $2,000, sometimes more, especially considering inflation. And remember, Maurizio paid just $200 to the thief who stole it. This was the gold rush. But there was another advantage, one even Maurizio hadn't initially realized, an unforeseen factor that would launch his airbag empire to stratospheric heights. Still, before that could happen, he had work to do. He began by immersing himself in the world of airbags, learning everything there was to know, their types, how they were assembled, how to remove them quickly and cleanly. Then he formed a specialized crew, handpicking the best thieves from his network. He trained them, equipped them, and streamlined the entire operation. The result? A smooth, professional pipeline of stolen airbags flowing directly into his shop. He treated his thieves well, paid them generously, because he knew that loyalty in this business was a direct function of cold, hard cash. Despite the high labor costs, his margins were sky-high. Buy at $200. Sell at $2,000. Multiply that by thousands of airbags. The math spoke for itself. But the growing wave of thefts didn't go unnoticed. The NYPD began receiving a surge of reports. Cars left fully intact, except for one missing component, the airbag. At first, police were baffled. Why airbags? But the pattern soon emerged. And when they realized just how valuable these parts were and how easily they could be moved, the picture became clearer. This wasn't random, this was organized. Still, when police caught a thief, they couldn't get him to talk. No one named names. No one mentioned Maurizio. Every single thief claimed to be working solo, and for their silence, they were barely punished. A short stint in jail, a fine, maybe some restitution. Nothing that would make them turn on the man at the top. As a result, airbag thefts exploded. Thousands were stolen every year, and the NYPD helpless. Maurizio's underground empire kept growing, fast, quiet, and almost completely invisible. Maurizio was living the dream. His operation was so successful, so prolific, that he quickly ran out of places to store the sheer volume of airbags his team was stealing. That's when he took the next leap, opening a massive warehouse and workshop, which he named All-in-One. But this wasn't just any repair shop. It was an empire in disguise. Part of the facility was used for storage, stacked floor to ceiling with stolen goods. The rest was transformed into a high-volume workshop. Instead of simply selling airbags to mechanics and repair shops, Maurizio began installing them himself, directly for customers. He even launched a nationwide shipping service, pushing his reach far beyond New York. Profits soared, and Maurizio wasn't shy about his success. He branded himself as the Airbag King, placing ads in newspapers, magazines, and even on the early internet. His marketing blitz worked. Business exploded. The cash was coming in by the millions. But with wealth came a new kind of fear, financial scrutiny. The thought of audits, investigations, or government eyes prying into his income terrified him. The money was too much, too fast, and none of it could be explained. That's when Maurizio knew he needed a professional. Enter Eileen, a friend from high school, and now a skilled accountant. Maurizio told her he ran a car parts company and offered her a lucrative position as the business's official accountant. When Eileen reviewed the records, she immediately knew something was off. The numbers didn't add up. The business was making too much, with too little explanation. Sensing she had figured it out, Maurizio came clean. He told her everything. All he needed from her, he said, was to make it all look legit. Clean the books, launder the income, erase the paper trail. At first, Eileen hesitated, but the salary Maurizio offered was hard to refuse, and eventually, money won. Her first piece of advice was simple, but brilliant. Start paying people by check. It would create the appearance of payroll, legitimate expenses, business as usual accounting. Maurizio listened. He contracted a check payment company and began issuing checks to everyone, employees, suppliers, even thieves. This subtle change added a layer of credibility to his entire operation. Now, it looked like a normal, taxable business, not a multi-million-dollar black market syndicate. With the finances under control, Maurizio turned to his next move, distancing himself from the dirtier side of the operation, where, once he managed the thieves directly, he now appointed 3 trusted lieutenants, longtime crew members he knew he could rely on. They were tasked with overseeing the theft crews and handling all operations on the ground. This change allowed Maurizio to step back, insulating himself from risk while tightening the structure of his growing empire. The result? A machine of terrifying efficiency. Imagine this. A customer calls asking for a specific airbag model. It's not in stock, no problem. Maurizio's crew could steal that exact airbag the very same day, often delivering and installing it within 24 hours. That kind of turnaround was faster than most official dealerships. Maurizio had essentially monopolized the airbag black market. It was a twisted, brilliant system. Your car's airbag could be stolen at night, and you could unknowingly buy it back at all-in-one the next morning. This full-circle feature became the cherry on top of his already booming empire, and made him a legend in the world of organized crime. But even Maurizio himself hadn't fully grasped the monster he was creating, or how masterfully he was manipulating the laws of supply and demand. He wasn't just selling stolen goods, he was manufacturing the entire market. At the peak of his success, Maurizio was even awarded Trader of the Year, a public recognition that added yet another layer of legitimacy to his front. To outsiders, he was a self-made entrepreneur, a street-smart success story. But behind the scenes, he had joined the ranks of New York's most powerful criminals. He indulged in luxury homes, expensive cars, and a life of pure opulence. But for Maurizio, money wasn't enough. He craved something far more valuable in the criminal world: respect, status. The kind that doesn't come from cash, but from bloodlines. In the Mafia world, respect was typically inherited. reserved for those born into powerful families. Maurizio, with no connections and humble beginnings, was still viewed as an outsider. No matter how wealthy he became, he couldn't shake the feeling of being second class. That's when he met Carla Montana, the daughter of a Mafia boss. His interest in her wasn't purely romantic. In fact, her last name was the most attractive thing about her. To Maurizio, she wasn't just a partner, she was a ticket, a way into the inner sanctum of Mafia prestige. He made his move, charming her, winning her over, expressing admiration and affection. And it worked. Carla fell for him. Her father, a seasoned Mafia don, was impressed by Maurizio's success and independence. He respected the fact that Maurizio had built his empire from the ground up without any help. That kind of ambition was rare. The approval came quickly. Their engagement marked the culmination of Maurizio's long game. Wealth? Check. A powerful wife? Check. Mafia respect and recognition? Check. He had finally secured everything he had ever wanted, carving out a seat at a table where his kind had never been welcome before. But in the world of crime, success is a double-edged sword. And Maurizio was about to learn, the hard way, that even when everything seems perfect, the fall can come fast. Because just as his empire reached its peak, one of his thieves got caught. Unfortunately for Maurizio, the downfall came not from one of his usual airbag thefts. One of his thieves was arrested, not for stealing, but for assault during a robbery gone wrong. It was a serious enough charge to ruin everything. Desperate to avoid prison, the thief offered authorities something bigger: information. He spilled everything about the Airbag Empire and about Maurizio. Acting on the tip, a police surveillance team set up outside All-in-One. It didn't take long before they saw people carrying large duffel bags into the workshop and leaving empty-handed. Suspicion confirmed. The police began preparing a raid. But Maurizio, always vigilant, had prepared for just such a scenario. He had installed surveillance cameras around the workshop, covering every possible angle. When he noticed an unmarked van parked nearby for too long, he didn't panic, he acted. He immediately called his assistants, ordering a halt to all incoming deliveries of stolen parts. Then, while detectives attempted to tail him, Maurizio performed a classic maneuver: 3 consecutive right turns. It's an old trick to flush out a tail. 3 rights make a circle. If the same car follows you through all 3 turns, you know you're being watched. Sure enough, he was. Knowing the heat was rising, Maurizio ordered all stolen airbags to be relocated, once again staying one step ahead of law enforcement and protecting his empire from collapse. But the police weren't giving up. They spent the next 18 months tracking his every move, trying to infiltrate his inner circle. In one attempt, they even sent an undercover officer to pose as someone trying to sell a stolen airbag to All-in-One. But Maurizio wasn't fooled. He refused the deal immediately. He never bought from outsiders, only his vetted network of thieves. Time after time, they tried to catch him, and failed. Then, in 1997, something changed. A move that would shift the tide against Maurizio forever. Honda, the Japanese car manufacturer, announced they were adding serial numbers to their airbags. It was a game changer. Now, if the police recovered a stolen Honda airbag, they could trace it, confirming whether it was a legitimate replacement or black market merchandise. Armed with this new tool, the NYPD shifted focus. They began compiling lists of stolen airbags from Honda models, creating a dedicated serial number database. The next step? Target All-in-One. Police requested airbags for specific Honda models, the same models they had records for. When the shipments arrived, they checked the serial numbers. Bingo, one matched a recently stolen airbag. It was the first concrete breakthrough after a year and a half of frustration. But they still needed more to build a watertight case, something that would destroy the entire operation in one strike. With a court-issued warrant in hand, the police began inspecting parcels shipped by Maurizio's company. These covert inspections were done secretly, the packages opened, examined, and resealed without any trace. What they found confirmed their suspicions. All-in-One was shipping thousands of stolen airbags across the country. But the final nail in the coffin came not from the parts, but from the paper trail. Investigators turned to the check-cashing service Maurizio had used to pay his employees and thieves. While it once gave him an air of legitimacy, it now became his Achilles heel. Unbeknownst to him, the check-cashing company recorded everything, including security footage of each recipient. Every thief and associate who cashed a check had their photo taken and signature captured. The evidence was irrefutable. Maurizio had direct financial ties to dozens of criminals. The thing that once made his operation seem clean, the checks, the records, now exposed the truth. After nearly 2 years, the police had what they needed. They secured an arrest warrant, organized a squad, and raided Maurizio's home, expecting to find their man. But the house was empty. There were no signs of struggle, no sign of a sudden escape. Instead, the scene was strangely calm. On the dining table, a collection of wedding gifts. Maurizio had just gotten married. Alongside the presents was a guest list from the wedding. And it wasn't just a list of friends, it was a who's who of organized crime. Mafia bosses, suspected figures under surveillance, and several of the thieves identified through the check-cashing photos. Also listed were the contact numbers of Maurizio's parents. Wasting no time, the detectives called his mother, posing as law enforcement responding to a burglary at her son's home. Concerned, she told them the truth. Maurizio was currently on his honeymoon in Hawaii. Even better, she gave them his honeymoon contact number. The detectives called, pretending to inform him about the supposed break-in. While on the call, they traced the number, pinpointing his exact location, a resort on the island of Maui. They contacted the FBI office in Hawaii, requesting immediate assistance. Agents were dispatched to the resort. They confirmed the room number and then moved in. Maurizio was arrested in the middle of his honeymoon. Just like that, the Airbag King was dethroned. Over the years, Maurizio and his network had stolen between 40,000 and 50,000 airbags, generating an estimated $60 million, a staggering sum, even more impressive when adjusted for inflation. His empire had operated undetected for years, exploiting gaps in the law and the auto industry. But in the end, it wasn't violence, betrayal, or even greed that brought him down. It was the very system he used to stay hidden. His financial legitimacy was what exposed him. After his arrest, most of his assets were seized. Properties, cash, vehicles. Whether he managed to stash some of his fortune remains unknown. Maurizio was sentenced to 10 years in prison, charged with money laundering and organizing theft. Some might call it lenient considering the scale. But prosecutors and the court acknowledged that his crimes, while large in scope, were nonviolent. No guns, no blood, just stealth, deception, and black market capitalism. Thanks for watching. Don't forget to like and subscribe our channel.